Hey
Hey,
Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Constance?
Good. I hear our guest is going to be one of my old acquaintances when I was an analyst with one of the large consulting firms. Shandon was one of the clients that I helped consult with. And so it'll be really fun to catch up with him and
Yeah.
learn from him.
Isn't it funny? It's just such a small world. Everybody knows everybody. And Shandon, what's interesting is he's got this whole professional background and experience, but he's going to be talking to us about some of his personal experiences today. So I'm really excited to hear from him.
Awesome. Can't wait to get started. Let's go.
Let's go. So, welcome, Shandon. We're so glad to have you with us today. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure, it's such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate what you and Constance are doing, and it's just wonderful to be able to talk to you today. So I am Shannon Fowler. I have been in the sort of healthcare and benefits space for about 14 years now, and in technology for another additional 10 years above and beyond that. And I sort of sit at the crossroads of consumerism and technology in the benefits space, and also for lack of a better term, eligibility, whether it's from an employer or an employee. When I worked at Benefit Focus, which I did for about 10 years, we came up with a term called everyone is eligible. And that was in light of the passage of the ACA and the idea that anybody could get some kind of insurance, whether it's government subsidized or government provided or provided by your employer or anywhere else. So that's where I focus a lot of my time and effort these days.
Thank you. And you're actually here today, not necessarily to talk about the professional experience you have, but something that happened personally. So, why don't you share a little bit about your story of getting health coverage?
Yeah. So when I decided to go into business for myself about 4 years ago now, I knew that I would be looking for health insurance. I had the option of Cobra through my company, or I could, go out and get health insurance myself. And it's a really inelegant term, but we've all heard it. It was an opportunity to eat my own dog food, so to speak.
Right.
I had been an ACA expert, in-house ACA expert for our company, and really advocated for the idea that everyone is eligible. So as an employer benefits platform, we wanted to provide benefit. We wanted to get as many people covered as possible. And the ACA seemed like a way to do that. And now here I was as the person who was going on to or shopping for ACA coverage. And it was very interesting. I went out and I did all the comparison shopping and all, looked at deductibles and co-pays and premiums and all the rest, all subsidies, everything that I had been talking about for years, and looked at it and got a decent deal. Was obviously I don't think anybody's ever nobody ever says, oh, wonderful, I'm only paying $300 a month, or something like that, uh, but it was actually pretty good. And then later on this past year it happened again. I had taken a full-time position for a little bit and then returned to consulting and went back out and shopped again. And I thought, I'm going to provide some numbers here. So I compared my coverage on an ACA plan to the coverage that I had received at my past two employers. And what I found was that especially from 4 years ago to today, the gap, the perceived gap between employer coverage and individual coverage through the ACA has shrunk over time, and not everyone in every situation is going to have the ACA be the best option for them. But we are getting to a point that a lot of us consultants, and Constance, you've been looking at this for many years. We're getting to a point where you look at the individual market with the ACA subsidies and you think, well, maybe that might actually be a reasonable replacement for employer-based healthcare. So that's what I wrote about. And lo and behold, I had a Wall Street Journal writer call me up and say, I saw your article. So there are photos of us, and I talked to her, and or well, I should say that she's followed our family around and caught us cooking pizza and stuff like that, and we talked about all that. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the pizza looks delicious in the article, but you touch on something really interesting because that seems to be this uh, almost like this point of contention right now is that employers who are currently offering group coverage hear about ICRA and they go, it's going to be a detriment to our employees. It's not going to be the same kind of benefit. And there does seem to be this difference in perception to reality. We've actually at Well did a study, and we're going to have a white paper coming out in the next little while, that those who don't have ACA coverage think that ACA coverage is awful. And those who do have ACA coverage and are actually utilizing the benefits, saying, well, no, there's actually some real decent coverage here. So how do you kind of talk through to people and help them see past that perception as opposed to reality?
Yeah, well, I think that, first and foremost, I think that whenever you can get numbers and personal experiences, that helps immensely. I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of people saying, and I'm included in this, group where people said, well, the first time I got on a high deductible health plan, it's because my coworker told me about this experience and it made sense.
Right.
Or the first time that I, got ACA coverage, it was this. That's what kind of, motivated me to put some numbers down. And just a quick example, what I found is that essentially from the last coverage that I had for an employer and the coverage that I currently have with a subsidy attached to it because of the new, subsidy, the CARES Act subsidies that have been added. There are the post CARES Act subsidies that have been added. I'm essentially spending in the ballpark of $12,000 to $15,000 less per year on my coverage than I would be, under my employer. Now, there are trade-offs there. I have a much higher deductible. So if, there's an emergency, then that's a problem, but still 10 to 15 or 12 to $15,000 is a lot to work with there. So that's something that I think that what you have to, first convince people is, look, your employer coverage isn't necessarily as good as you might think it is just because your employer is providing it. And that's sort of a negative, but it's reality. And then you have to say your ACA coverage or the ACA coverage that would be available to you with subsidy at your income level and family makeup is not as bad as you think it is, and so essentially, and that's a tough sell, because you want everybody to sort of say, oh, I love this. But the truth is, I always kind of make the argument that getting health insurance is like doing your taxes. You have to do it. You don't need to enjoy doing it or have
not like the same as buying a purse.
A couple things, Shannon, that come to mind. Because you think you're going to kind of fall off a cliff when you leave the employer plan space, right? I like you did this a couple of years ago. And while the landing is pretty equal, a couple of things that, I'll just throw out there to consider. One is employers like to kind of pack the benefits with, the engagement solutions and the carrot and stick solutions and, the getting your biometric screening and getting, $100 incentive back. At the end of the day, most of us don't maximize those, right? So even paying out of pocket for a direct to consumer can make up for that. And then the other is, and maybe Sarah, you can talk a little about this as well as Shannon, I don't have the pre-tax, HSA co-contribution from my employer, right? So there are a few differences in terms of what I'm kind of graced with when I have an employer plan, but then, how do you mitigate that when you're going off on your own and you don't get these are the freebies or the niceties?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Constance, and it's something that I definitely took into consideration. Once again, the plans on the ACA plans are not HSA eligible. Now, that is kind of balanced out with the fact that I'm not getting an employer contribution to an HSA anyway. But I actually considered that as part of my math. And one big driving factor for me is I'm insuring 6 people. We have myself, my wife, our 2 children, and then a niece and a nephew for which we have guardianship. And so we're at we average probably a lot more trips to the doctor, even well visits to the doctor than,
Right.
the average family. And this plan that we have, even though it has a pretty big, big deductible, it also has copays, and the doctors that we go to are in network. So I think what I put it toward is more of a practical understanding. And again, there are trade-offs there. So if you if you have employer coverage and you're relatively well off, financially, then it's going to be much more of a strong consideration. Is employer coverage better than this? But I think that, what we're really talking about is if you are thinking about, going out on your own, or, being having side hustle, whatever it is, that sort of the new definition of work. There was this panic for many years that you're not going to have something that's equal to an employer plan. And so what I've, tried to sort of advocate is, well, that's not 100% true. So you should be very mindful not to just stay at a company because you think that the benefits, including the bells and whistles, are going to, serve you better than if you were to sort of, try your own thing, basically.
Well, and I also think because you kind of have to do your homework when you do enroll on your own or on behalf of your family, have skin in the game. And that's something,
Yes.
I'll have to admit with my employer plan, I don't have much skin in the game. It's all kind of predetermined for me. Now I've got much more skin in the game, even aside of my HSA that I might have had as an employer. I really, these are precious dollars. It's real clear how I'm paying for them. It's not coming out of my paycheck, right? That's a separate action I have to be aware of and see every month. So, hopefully engagement is, a byproduct of having to figure out your own insurance opportunity as a small individual, family, small business, etc.
Well, I think there's the kind of hybrid of the two, for lack of a better term, is this ICRA, this individual coverage HRA, where there are lots of small employers that are looking to provide a dollar benefit without the group coverage. And then you still get this ability to choose from a much larger universe of plans, the one that fits you best. And you do get some of that pre-tax dollars being put towards it with, payroll deductions and your employer paying a portion of it. But what it still gives you that skin in the game, in the sense that you have to pick the plan, you have to be aware of it. And one of the things that you did, Shandon, in this personal experience is you kind of realize that people often need a guide. So I know that you've been helping a lot of friends and family help them navigate it. But what are the top 3 factors that you think are important for someone to look for when they're shopping for health insurance?
Well, I think that they're kind of the age-old factors that you're looking at. I think that, for me, premium was definitely a huge factor. Overall costs, and you can do some very simple. Now, this doesn't have to be something where you are doing a lot of math, and sites like a lot of the modern marketplaces will help you in this area, where you need to kind of see how much you might end up spending over the course of a year, because it can be really confusing between premium and deductible and all this different kind of stuff. So try to figure out what your overall outlays are going to be. And then the other one for individual coverage in particular, that I kind of, didn't think much about in the past is network. It's really, really important to know if things are in network, because for me personally, if I have a doctor with that copay that's in place, if I have a doctor that's in network, I'm saving $150 to $300 per doctor visit, just for that, and that all adds up really quickly. So I think those are, from my perspective and from over time looking at things, those have been extremely valuable. Now, obviously, deductible is one that people talk about a lot, and you can't ignore deductible. You just cannot ignore it. There are other things. There are sort of some kinds of gap coverage, or different kinds of things. But if you are going to be high utilization for any reason, then you got to look out for that. And you also, it's good to, if you're able to save some money through the subsidies and you have extra to put it away, even if you're not getting an HSA. If you do get hurt and you at least have something, a nest egg that you can sort of help to pay that off, that's good. Again, this isn't perfect world by any means, but it's a viable option.
It's an art, not a science, right?
Well, and it kind of mirrors financial planning as an individual or a small business, right? All of a sudden I have to understand where I can set aside pre-tax or post-tax dollars for my future, and we don't tend to think of that as employees as health planning financially as future. We're kind of like every month our paycheck gets hit, or every month we pay a bill to the doctor. But I think, when you are on your own and you are looking at these individual plans, you are definitely thinking ahead about that catastrophe, right? Or that high cost, or that out of network that maybe was circumstantial.
Everything. It's incredible. There's this term that I've heard, in relation to salespeople or brokers or whoever, that says you're coin operated. And I think that as a consultant, and Constance, I'm sure you've had this experience. You just talked about this. When you are, when you are your own boss, you get very, very precise and maniacal almost about your time and how much your time is worth and how much you're spending and so on and so forth. You know exactly what something is going to cost you, or you try to figure out exactly what something is going to cost you, because every dollar in is going toward your living expenses and so on and so forth. So you get you start to see where the waste really is. And let's be honest. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and just like with your being part of an employer organization, much of that is not on your back, right? You're not picking the plan designs, and you're not monitoring all of the other expenses that we don't see as employees. So I do think that as you get to individual small business, having a trusted partner, broker, website you feel confident in checking out plans and comparing them, and looking at in and out of network and formularies and other things that are going to be impacting the cost and just the the experience, right? Do I feel confident that I made the right choice? If there's somebody I can talk to, I have questions. Having both an independent agent, broker agent, or a platform with those support services is critical, just like it is when you're on your own trying to figure out a billing system for your consultancy.
Constance, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's something that WELL strives to be, is not just a marketplace, but an educational platform, something to really help you understand it. And, Shandon, you have this wealth of knowledge, both professionally and now from this firsthand experience personally. I would love, if you're willing, to have those who are listening, we're going to share this on LinkedIn and elsewhere, have them kind of send in questions. And then would you be willing to come back at a later date, kind of an ask me anything with the BeWell team? Would you be interested in doing that with us?
Oh, I would love to do it. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny you say that, because I got a call after the Wall Street Journal article ran. I got a call on my phone, and I picked it up, and the guy said, "Hi, I saw the article in the Wall Street Journal, and I gotta ask you. I'm about to kind of go through what it sounds like you went through. Can you help me get insurance?" And I thought, well, not officially, but I can answer any questions you have. but it also kind of got me thinking, and so I am actually going through the motions to get my broker's license so that I can officially help people. So
that's awesome.
So, yeah.
And when you do, we have a whole broker portal on Well, and we'd be happy to help you get those people enrolled. Shandon, thank you so much for your time. Constance, as always, thank you. This was really enlightening. And to those listening, if there's more questions that you have for Shandon or for Constance or for me, let us know. You can send us an email. You can put it in the comments anywhere you want, and we will certainly regroup and do our best to answer your questions. Be well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shandon.
Thanks.